folks, today I want to talk about 4 main things that you need to have when it comes to the information that you retain in your brain to make effective decisions. These 4 things are absolutely critical because every moment we are making decisions both consciously and unconsciously. So if we don't have these 4 elements in the information that we have, that we are using to make decisions, then we're going to make ineffective decisions. And I always come back to this basic formula of life. It's such a simple formula, but it's extremely powerful. And it's what I call the expanding formula. It's how we expand and grow in life, but it's how we also operate in life. We basically do these 4 things. A, we make decisions. B, we take action. C, we experience, you can say, the outcomes or results of the decisions and actions that we've taken. So essentially, we experience life. And then the 4th element is we learn and we grow. So those are the 4 things. If you do these effectively, you will be successful in life. The challenge is that many of us stumble in one of these 4 areas, if not more. And then we repeat the cycle of making the same mistakes or taking ineffective action. So what we need to do in order to start at that ground level of making better decisions is we need to have effective information. We need to have the right data. This is something that just dawned on me a number of years ago because I was always aware of information and data, but this was so important when it was explained from a physics perspective. Everything that we do as human beings is based on 2 things: energy and information. So energy is something that I talk about very often. We train on energy. It's one of the core concepts of human potential and performance. But the other one that we don't talk about very much, we do in our programs, but a lot of people don't, is information. Information is so important because that's how we make our decisions. And information can actually be high quality information or it could be low quality information. And so how many times have we made a decision based on low quality information? And what has that cost us? And where did we end up as a result of making those types of decisions? So in many cases, it's not just the decisions that we make that are important, it's the information that we base the decisions on. And to have effective decision making, the information needs to have these 4 elements. These are very, very important elements. And the acronym I use is TARA, T-A-R-A. And each one of these elements is something that we need to cognizantly bring to light when we are taking a look at the information we are taking in. The first element is timeliness or timely. Is the information that we are using, the data we are using, is it timely? Here's an example. If you're making a decision in your business and the data is from 6 months ago, well, that's outdated, particularly in today's age or in today's economic times because things are changing so rapidly. So the information needs to be timely, and it depends on the situation. Some information, maybe 3 months, information that's 3 months old might be appropriate. But in other instances, maybe information that's even 3 hours old may be inappropriate. So we have to take that into consideration. And I highly recommend that when we are working with our teams and we're talking about information, we create guidelines to say, hey, look, if we're going to make these important decisions, we need to have these 4 elements, TARA, and the timeliness in terms of the information we are using needs to fit within these standards, whether it's 3 hours, 3 months, 3 days, whatever it is for that type of decision making. So timeliness is very important. The second one, by far the most important element, is accuracy. Okay, it needs to be accurate. If the information that you have is inaccurate, I can't tell you how many times I have to grill people on this when we work with them to identify how are they getting this information? Who are they getting this information from? How do they know that it's accurate? Because if it's inaccurate, you're going to have a real challenge when it comes to decision making. And hence, this is why there's a big warning when it comes to the AI that we use. Because AI is just using information that has been put out there, a lot of cases on the web, on the internet, and we don't know if it's accurate or not. That's why I have a huge caution for individuals not to depend on AI fully. I recommend individuals to supplement their knowledge or gaps using AI, but also be very cautious because that information may not be accurate. The third element, the R, is relevant. It's just a basic example. I was working with this one CEO, and he was bringing up a situation or an example that wasn't even relevant to the current thing that we were discussing. And so the information that he was using was completely irrelevant, But this is what ends up happening because we are human beings. We bring in information that may not even be relevant to the decision we are making, and that automatically influences the decision. So we have to consciously be aware and say, what information are we using to make decisions? What in the decision-making process, we call these reference points. So what are the reference points? Are they actually relevant? Because if we are bringing in information that's irrelevant, and guess what? Most of our thinking is done at the unconscious level. So whether we think it's creating bias or not, it absolutely is creating bias. So we have to be aware and consciously say, this information is irrelevant, but knowing that it's still going to have a little bit of a bias. But at least you are consciously aware of that. So make sure that the information is relevant to the decision and the situation you are making. And then the fourth element, or the fourth aspect of Terra, which is the A, is actionable. Is it something that you can actually act on? Very important, because sometimes we have information that's good to know, which is, it's an important part of making decisions, but there's nothing we can act on based on those decisions. So in the situation of being a CEO or a business leader, and we're making these important decisions, we have to take into consideration what we can act on and what we can't act on. And so we end up taking in, this is another part, kind of a sideline here, is if we consume a whole bunch of information that is not stuff that we can act on, that can overshadow the information that we can act on. So people get overwhelmed by all of these things and stuff that they have no control over, that they can't do anything about. And therefore, all of this stuff that we can do something about, that gets lost in the dust, right? That gets lost in the heap of all this information. We are absolutely in information overload in today's, you can say, times. So these are the four elements. So anytime you're making a decision, take a look at the information that you have and ask yourself, A, is it timely? B, is it accurate? C, is it relevant? And D, is it actionable? If you use those four elements, you're going to get better and better at making decisions. And that effectively is going to allow you to take more effective action and get the result that you're ultimately looking for.